Mozilla. Hey everybody, we're back for episode 2. After episode 1 dropped, I got a lot of questions and comments from friends who were asking me stuff that I seem to not cover in the first episode. So the purpose of this episode is to go back over the information that we went over in episode 1 and kind of elaborate a little bit on it. But I wanted to get into some of those a little bit more specifically, because there is more data to be known about this and there is more data to understand. So today I have a good friend of mine on the podcast who's also a professional photographer and videographer. And I figured that a good thing to do would be for us to get together and cover some of the more intricate topics that we covered on the first one. So this is my friend Jake. He's a professional photographer, videographer.
Yo. Sorry, I didn't say hi. I said yo.
That's okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it's totally fine.
I kicked off the podcast.
Can you give us a little rundown briefly of your skill level and your career?
Yeah, I'm a published photographer, award-winning filmmaker. I've done over 1 billion impressions with my content, and I work with large brands to then a handful of different corporate clients, and I've been doing this for a better part of a decade.
Wow, that's way more impressions and views than I've ever gotten. I think my lifetime tick is up to like around 2 million. So that's not even close to 1 billion.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. We've, anything from TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Amazon, content's been kind of seen around the world. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I like your stuff. You do good stuff.
Thank you, man.
Okay, so let's jump into it. So the format I want to do on this one is I'm just going to kind of ask you questions. And what I like is to give like a little bit of data, obviously, don't reveal any names if you don't want to, but.
Oh, we're going to drop all the tea, all the gossip.
Yeah, just, it's good to, give the listeners a little bit of context when we're giving instructions. So
yeah, I think we'll just kind of talk it out because we both come from slightly different perspectives. And we've been shooting together as friends for years.
Over 10 years.
I know you've been, it was fun seeing your progression and seeing you become such an amazing photographer I remember when this was barely a hobby. I remember when this was a dream and you're like, dude, I just want to come up. I want to, where you're working, traveling around, what is you? Platinum something diamond Delta. Diamond's Delta status. That's how much he flies, folks. He might not have 1 billion impressions yet, but I've got
over 400,000 flown miles on Delta alone.
That right there is a stat of just saying how much you travel doing this, because a lot of your content isn't social content. That's my stat, is social content.
Yeah, okay, I guess that's a fair point.
You do a website, but it's like what was that, like 2019, right before the world shut down, like you had how many flights? What was it like? Many different cities?
I think 2020 I had more. 2020, I think I had over 100 flights that year.
That's insane. Realize that's like a different city. That's like
2 flights a week.
2 flights a week. That's insane.
That's true. Okay, good. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is I wanted to explain to you my process of like how somebody books a shoot with me, and then how that can sort of translate to the client so that the client can actually use that to move forward with their own photographer or searching for their own photographer.
And I remember you talking about this as in episode 1, and there were definitely things I was like 100%. I agree. And there were other things I was like, dude, no way. 0%. And so this is gonna be fun.
Good. I would love to hear it. Instead of actually explaining my process, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just do the bullet points in terms of how they should apply to the client, so that we don't get into, a whole sales pitch. But essentially, the first thing I do with my client is I formulate a plan of action. They call me and say, hey, I need a shoot.
So is this after they're saying like, hey, follows, like they are no longer a lead, but they are now a customer?
No, they're a lead, and they'll essentially contact me. And the first thing is like the plan of action. That's the first thing I do, because, and it's not, that's maybe a misnomer. It's not like the full plan of action, but essentially I need to know sort of what they want, what they're expecting for.
Kind of discovering what are they like? Yeah, what
who
do
they are,
want?
what's their business, that kind of thing. And so depending on who they are and what they want will depend on what I'm going to do for them. And, I want to align what, my purpose of why I do what I do to their purpose. Otherwise, it's just not going to be a good relationship for either of us. And I think that clients should really look for that, because there are guys who will just go, yeah, what do you want me to shoot? Yeah, I'll show up. Okay, cool. And won't really get behind that. So that's kind of my step that I do to make sure that I get behind what the client wants.
That, and also not everybody needs the same thing. It's also, that's from my perspective, is different clients need different things. Like, for example, you shoot a lot of this similar things. I have a little broader scope of what I offer. And so it's a little bit of like, discovering of just like, what do they want from the shoot? What are they trying to get out of it?
It's true. For me, because I shoot a lot of the same stuff, it's slightly different for me to get my own mind wrapped around what the client wants, and so that I get excited about the shoot, because I don't want to do a shoot that I'm not excited about. If I show up to a place to just methodically and robotically take photos, I'm going to hate my life. So I want to love every shoot I do.
And they're not going to like the photos.
Exactly. I really use that point to delineate to them sort of what I think we should do in a general sense. Like, obviously, I'm not going over specifics, but I come up with ideas at this point. Oh, you want to do blah, or you're trying to showcase this, that you do this. Okay, this is what I think we should do. And then to me, that communicates that I know what I'm talking about. And so for a client, if you're talking to a photographer and that person doesn't share any expertise with you, I think that's a red flag. If somebody's just like, yeah, okay, we can do that, and doesn't say, oh, I have a great idea, let's try this, or have you thought about this?
Well, that's the thing. That's the time to see the artist come out. That's the first time you're switching from kind of the business person you're talking to.
That's right.
To the artist, because they're very different jobs.
Yeah.
And you want to see that you're hiring like a 9-to-6 employee who's just going to show up, do what they're told, and leave.
Yeah.
You want to hire an artist who's going to create something, because the better they create it is the better impact that product, those images, those videos are going to have on the audience.
It's true.
Which is what you're paying for. And you're going to be able to make more money. What you pay your photographer, your videographer, your ROI on those photos, those videos is going to be astronomically better.
And that kind of leads me into the next point, which is convenient, which is the vibe that you get with that person. I was telling my friend, I talked about in episode 1, my friend in Australia, it was one of the biggest things I was talking to him about, was making sure that whoever the photographer that he's, going to hire, that he has a good rapport with. If you have somebody who's not fluid and communicative, that's not going to be a fun photo shoot. And you're already going to be, as anybody who's not a professional model or actor, getting their photos taken, it's going to be a little bit stuffy already.
Also, just somebody you want to work with. Realize it's just different personalities. Even Fazal and I have different personalities.
It's true.
What experience do you want? It's going to be, the same way with, I look at it as in any profession, a lot of different professions. Like, for example, a real estate agent. 2 different real estate agents could probably find you the same house, or can help sell you the same house. But this is somebody you're going to be in touch with, that you're going to want to use ideally use in the future. You're going to build a relationship with this person. So it's like, why not have it be someone you like talking to?
Yeah, but also you're going to want somebody who gets you too. And that's, to me, the ultimate thing. I've seen people who have dealt with people in business who maybe their personalities don't align perfectly, but the one person really gets the other person, and it's like, hey, this, and then you want them to go, oh yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and not only totally duplicates your vision, from the client perspective, but also can then enhance it.
Totally.
Can take what you're thinking in your head, completely duplicate it, and make it even better. That would be the perfect person to hire.
1,000,000%. That reminds me, in April of last year, I had this client who called me who was in New York, and we talked about the ins and the outs, and I gave him my price, and he said, I can't really afford that. I'm just starting out, money's a little bit tight. Because I really liked him and what he was trying to do, I said, I'll make you a deal. I didn't tell him this, but in my mind, I already wanted to go to New York because there was another client I was trying to shoot out there. So I figured if he would hire me, it would make it easier for me to go to New York. Okay, if we're going to do this deal, you have to let me shoot what I want to shoot of you. And he was like, okay, done. And so what we did was we did a 1.5-day shoot, and he hired 6 models, and we shot at this beautiful house just barely in Long Island, one of the biggest houses I've ever been to. And it was probably one of my favorite shoots I've ever done, because at the end of it, when his website got built, all of the photos on his page are just the photos I took. There's not one stock photo. And that was because, you know, he let me do my thing. And, you know, obviously I was in coordination with him the whole time, you know, because I was manning the helm of the shoot. All of the items that were needed were fully gotten.
And in a similar way, to give you another anecdote on my side of that, like if there's a client I want to work with and they can't afford the rate, because I own my own company, I can set my own rates.
Yeah.
You know, you work with photographers, and so there's a give and take.
But I mean, you make your own deal at that moment with that person.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm saying from a client standpoint. If you can't afford a photographer, don't rule that photographer out. That's the kind of the punchline I'm trying to go for, is that like if there's a photographer you really like, most of the time they'll work with you. Again, it goes back to the point we just made earlier, which was about the vibe, you know, and the personality. If you guys get along well, there usually is a deal to work out.
For the client who's looking for the photographer, it's worth asking them. It's worth going back and forth and trying to say, hey, you know, what can we do about this? And they could say nothing, but they could also go, okay, let me hook you up.
No, it's a win-win situation. Like you just change the deal, so it's a win-win situation for both parties.
Yeah, like you can't exactly. Yeah, it's not like automatically like, oh, you can't afford me, or we're gonna do a deal. Okay, you're getting less photos.
That's why it's just talking it out to find out what makes sense for both people.
I'll also say that just because somebody will negotiate with you does not mean that they're a good photographer and that you should accept them. You should also always look at their portfolio. That's another big thing.
100%.
So all of the things we've gone over are kind of a piece of a pie, and each of these add up to a full pie. So if, you know, one thing is really good and the rest are not good, that, you know, you need to kind of look for a balance of all of these. And portfolio is a big one, because you can go onto some photographer and you could see their portfolio and they have these beautiful images, but you also need to have confidence that they're going to be able to produce that type of image every time. Not like 1 out of 30 shoots they've done this beautiful photo and deleted the rest of them and not put those on their portfolio and only taken the best of the best of the best. I mean, you have to assume that they're going to put the best of the best up, but you need to figure out in your mind, are these images representative of, you know, their work on a good day?
But it's also how deep is their portfolio? How many different shoots have they done? How long have they been doing it for? Do you have a recommendation from someone you trust who's shot with this individual before? There's a lot of different ways to help kind of verify that it's the right type of thing.
Yeah, that's true. And the other thing too is clients also need to be in the process of training their eye. Style is the first one, because, you know, people will flock to, oh, that's my style. They'll see something that's really moody and be like, oh, I love that. But you know what? Just because you love that, is that the style of your brand? You know, you really need to align those things. The second thing is the composition. We talked about this in episode 1. When I say composition in this point, what I mean is specifically how the photos are set up. Are there weird things in the background that don't add into the photo or take away from the photo? Those should be gotten rid of. Everything in the photo should add to the vibe of the photo. The other thing is the lighting. Specifically, the quality of lighting is what I'm talking about, whereas the guy who's setting up the lighting knows exactly how to do the lighting beautifully so that you look amazing, so that the background looks amazing and the entire images look amazing. And then the last thing would be the moment. You know, do we capture a great emotion? How's your body pose? And I've just seen so many photos where there have been guys who, you know, I'm colleagues with, or I know, or I follow on Instagram. The clients are posting their photos. Oh my God, lovely shoot with this person. Maybe they had a good vibe, but I'm looking at the images like, these are like mediocre at best.
One thing I always do with my clients is I will have them find inspo shots, build a mood board, find inspiration shots, or, you know, with video content, send me a video. For the prospective clients out there, continue to build a set of images, a set of videos in your niche that you like, that you admire. You're like, dang, I wish that was me in that photo. I love visually the aesthetic of like old film. Mm-hmm. A little bit of grain. I find those images stunningly beautiful. Mm-hmm. That is not my style.
Right.
I do not shoot that style.
Yeah.
My images are heavy contrast, deeper saturation, bright, vibrant, action. I don't do moody soft. Mm-hmm. I just don't. Mm-hmm. But I personally love to look at it. There's a style that you could visually like, but that doesn't fit your actual brand.
Right, as a photographer and also as a client.
Well, exactly, on both sides. And so like one thing on the wedding side, just to give one last example, there are 3 distinct styles. And so you have to find your wedding photographer based on that style.
Right.
Like I have a good friend of mine who's one of the top wedding photographers out here in LA, and she has a very specific style. It is not the style that I like.
And people love it. People love her style. Yeah.
And she works.
Yeah, she works a lot.
She works nonstop, but it's a very distinct style.
Yeah.
And you either want that style or you don't want that style.
Yeah, and then the other thing too, I don't like have a specific style in the sense that you're talking about, like visual
but you do,
style.
though.
In the way I shoot, I do. Like this is a specific example that happened recently. I went to San Antonio to do this shoot, and I had shot this client before, and they had moved offices. In their first office, it was very bright, lots of windows. All the tones were very neutral, like light faded blues, grays, that kind of thing. They moved into an office that now was like fully black. Like the walls were painted black. Everything was dark. When I got there, I had no idea that was going to happen. I had to check with the client and say, hey, like, and they were like, no, the vibe is now moody. So we had to switch to moody just because. So it's not really for me, it's not really a sense of like, what do I feel like shooting today? It's like what my environment lends itself to the photos. And so if somebody says, hey, I really want bright and airy and light, and they have their office or their house or whatever studio we're in is like dark and black, this is not going to work. And so that's why I say as a commercial photographer, I need to be a little bit more fluid when it comes to the job at hand and sort of what is needed, and to be able to kind of do a number of styles, if that makes any sense.
And I want to just, on the client side, making sure your photographer is able to be fluid.
Yes.
Or if they have a singular style, like my friend who's the wedding photographer, that's the style she shoots. It's the only style
and you have
she
to
shoots.
love that style if you're going to hire that person.
She doesn't do another style. Exactly. So you're going to either like that style and hire her, or you're going to find a different photographer.
If I call her and I say, hey, I really like your behind the scenes video and how you work with your clients, and I want to hire you, but I would love you to do this style, she's going to be like, I don't do that.
She's going to say, thank you very much for the compliment. We're not a right fit.
Exactly.
Because that's not the style you're going to get from her.
Yeah, I think for everybody listening, I think the key is that when you're looking at this prospective photographer's portfolio, you should really love several of the images. If they have on their portfolio that they're shooting sports and portraits, and you don't like any of the sports stuff, but you like all of the portrait stuff, that's probably a good thing. But yes, it should be a majority of like whatever you're looking for.
Stuff, you should go like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Sure. I mean, if it's like terrible, then maybe that's not a good person to hire. It would really have to be that you look at their portfolio and say, okay, this is the person, this person's visual aesthetics like encompasses what I want.
Yeah, don't buy a fixer-upper house.
No.
Buy the house that is turnkey, that you go, yep, I love it.
Exactly. The photographer that you're hiring, and I'm mentioning this as separate from the vibe, because this is going to tell you if you have a person who is a go-getter or a person who's not. Do they have an interest in pitching you and in selling you and in getting you to hire them just for the sake of money? Or do they have an interest in it that, will lend itself to your interest? Do those interests merit, like, oh, I really love this project. I've always wanted to shoot something like this. Like that is something that you want as a client, because, if you find somebody who, and they're telltale signs too, when they have an interest in what you're doing, and you can tell that they're going to like just sink their teeth into this project, you can tell right away. And to me, that's like a very important point.
The easiest way, in my opinion, because I can tell it from my perspective, is does that photographer start instantly, when they start talking to you, start instantly coming up and pitching you ideas of like, oh, we could shoot like this, we could shoot that, we could totally do this? Or are they just like, oh yeah,
or
cool.
Are you saying things and they go, oh, you mean like this? And you're like, no, that's not what I meant this. And they're kind of like, oh,
are
okay.
they duplicating and enhancing your ideas? Something
I touched on earlier that I want to talk about as its own point is clients training their eye to kind of gain expertise. So here's
such an important thing.
Yeah. So I feel like a lot of people who have money have this idea, or the people who don't have money maybe, who have this idea that when I do have money, that I'm just going to hire everybody to do everything for me. But the truth of the matter is, when you're in charge of your own business or when you're in charge of your own affair, you really need to like take the reins of that, and you need to know a little bit about things. And so because of that, I feel like clients really need to educate themselves on what a beautiful image is. And the way you can do that very easily, the way I always recommend is I say, go on Google, go on your competitors, go on your colleagues, go on Pinterest, and, do some searches and tab what you like and tab what you want.
I totally second all of this.
Because it's like, if you don't really know, and you knock all these other points in, it's like, oh, the vibe is great, he sounds like he knows what he's doing, the style looks good, but you don't know, that photographer could show up and shoot your entire shoot and you get nothing that you thought you were going to get because you didn't have your eye trained in the points that I mentioned earlier about lighting, composition, those things.
Hopefully you're thinking with this the same way with like your bookkeeper and your, your house cleaner, like, or your any position you hire. You have to know what that looks like, if they're doing the right job or not. So why would that not go for a photographer or your videographer?
I would advise anybody who's out there in the market for a photographer to really like take a moment to sit down and pull out their phone and just look at images and just get an opinion of what they like personally and how those photographs translate to the website or to social media or to whatever platform they're on. Because the sooner that people start understanding visuals and getting an idea of what great visuals are, or even what decent visuals are, will be the sooner that they'll be able to be satisfied with the photographer that they hire.
And this is part of that working on the business, not in the business aspect. So if you have a certain amount of hours a week that you put to working on the business, put this on that list of things to work on the business on.
That's right. That's right. And once, I would say you spend about 30 minutes kind of getting an idea of, what you like visually, then you start looking at the specific points of the photos. Like, what does the visual composition look like? Are there things in the photo which add to the photo, or are there things in the photo which distract from the photo? And you'll notice that the ones that don't have the things that distract are better photos. How is the lighting? How's the quality of the lighting? Does the skin look great? And I'm not talking about retouched skin. I'm not talking about skin that looks like melted wax. I'm talking about, are the clothes wrinkled? Is the guy's hair messy? Is the girl's hair frizzy? These kind of things.
And the biggest thing I tell clients is like, look, you don't need to know anything technical. You can tell me, I like the vibe of this photo. I don't know why, but look at these 4 photos. They look the same. I like this vibe.
I would advise to know why you like the photo and to figure out why you like the photo.
As long as you know that you do like it, and you could say like, oh, I like the coloring here, or I like it because it's dark. You don't need to have like the technical terms. Those are, the more you can help us, the more we can help you. What's the Jerry Maguire line, right?
Yeah,
help me help you.
Yeah, it's not required that any client knows even, half or a quarter of what the photographer knows, because obviously that's not their job. But
the same way we don't know your job.
Exactly. The points to be made are that, like, when you are looking at the photo and you just take that extra step beyond, like, oh, I really like the vibe of this photo. Okay, cool. What do you like about it?
Yeah. Why do you like it?
Yeah. Is it the visual composition? Is it the lighting? There's 2 other points, which one is like the emotional effect that you get from the photo. Like, you can't really tell why you like it, but for some reason you get something from the photo.
It makes me feel this way.
Exactly. And that's the emotional effect that you get, and then as part of that, what communication does it tell you? You're on a website for an activewear brand. You don't want to see people standing still. You want to see people out there getting it. So if you see a picture of a person who looks like they're in action, but you don't get an emotional communication from them, that photo's not going to hit because you're not getting that communication.
Like, for example, you shoot a lot of lawyers. Imagine a lawyer that looks weak, not confident. Is that a lawyer you're going to want to hire? Whether if you're a prosecutor or, I don't know, lawyers, but, you're going to win this case. You're, I don't know if we can curse on this, but you're a badass, and you're going to be the individual that's going to change this person's life.
Your photographer should understand that about your business.
And should probably even be, to lean on again what we were saying earlier, should be the one to be telling you this.
That's exactly right. And then the last sort of ingredient to that is all of these things put together should add up to what you're trying to do with the photos. If you're trying to advertise, which in my case, all of my clients are trying to advertise, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Google Ads, or just their website, whatever your photographer decides to do with you in terms of an image, this should go hand in hand with doing what you're trying to do business-wise.
So to go hand in hand with that, I shoot a lot of social content, right? And I can literally tell people, I'm like, this video won't go viral. Like, we can do this. It's a good video, but it's not going to go viral. So it might not go viral. It might be like, great, this is for people who are following you already to provide more value to go, oh, I really like this person. And that it's like, great, you put out the wide net, and then this is just more valuable, more bait out in the ocean to get that person to like you. So, but just know that and have the correct expectations.
And so this doesn't necessarily this is not my recommendation to all clients to be like overbearing or micromanaging to the people you hire, especially the photographers. But what I will say is that if you let them create and let them do their stuff and trust their intuition and their knowledge, because you are trusting them, you should know that you can trust them. So if you can't, then, and I said this in the first episode, if you find yourself micromanaging people, it's probably not a good fit because you don't trust them to.
And they probably aren't competent enough.
I'll give you an example. I had this client who was from Miami, and he called me and he said, hey, I want to do this shoot. And he had a very specific criteria of what he wanted to do. And he started to name, okay, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. I did this other shoot and it really was good, but just everything wasn't great. I wanted to make it better. And to me, right away, he sounded like an overbearing, micromanaging client, right? That was a flag popping up. Yeah, but I did my due diligence. Instead of saying, I don't think this is a good fit, I said, let me ask this guy some questions. So I asked him some questions. And I really found out that he was just a client who had trusted the wrong person and who had gotten a shoot and paid a lot of money for a shoot to basically throw it all in the garbage. And now he's calling me to hire me to do the same shoot. So I said, okay, cool. So this is not a micromanaging client. This is a client who just knows what he wants.
Who got burned. And so, doesn't want to waste another however hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Exactly. And so I said, okay, let me listen to this gentleman and spend a little bit extra time than I normally do. And with action, I handled all of those concerns by the time I showed up. And he just kind of watched over my shoulder and, had a couple of notes and said, hey, can we do this? And I said, sure. I let him look at the shoot and I made sure that he was into the shoot the entire time we were shooting, because the last thing I wanted to do was go, hey, you're a client, you don't know anything, get out of here. And then have him, get the shoot, a week after the shoot's done and have him look at the gallery and say, this is not what I wanted. And so I intentionally let him partake in the shoot so that he could be sure. I mean, he was so happy with that shoot. So
you're hiring a teammate. At the end of the day, this is somebody you want on your team. You want this person to have the same vision as you.
Yeah, you don't want an employee who, you're paying whatever their salary is to show up and sit at their desk and you have to tell them to do everything every 5 minutes. So you want somebody who you're going to say, this is your job, and you want them to be passionate about what they do. And once they understand what they're doing, they just go and then they bring you value. And, occasionally you look in and check on them and see what they're doing. But most of the time you just have the trust that they're going to kill it for you.
They're going to kill it because of all the actions that they've said and done already.
Going back to training your eye and what a beautiful image is, if you do all of the things that we talked about today and you don't do that, you still might run into a problem. There's a guy that I follow on Instagram who is really, really good at one type of photo and he kills it. But he also gets hired for jobs that aren't that, and he does not do great. I see on his comments on Instagram all the time that people are like, oh my God, it was such an amazing shoot with you. It was so fun. You made it so easy, which, as we talked about on this episode, that is a very valuable thing. But I'm looking at the images and I know those images have a very short shelf life. So the client had an amazing experience, which is awesome, but the photos that came out of it were not. And so that's why training your eye is a very big thing. Like I said, it's a pie and you want all of the ingredients. You don't want to skip on any of the ingredients.
If you guys need any help or you guys have any questions, whether you're going to hire Fazil or not, you can always reach out to him. He's happy to also, if he is also not the right person, that's also a sign of a great photographer and a great businessman. If they are not the right style for you, they will tell you they're not right and refer you to the right person. I definitely don't shoot Fazil's style, and Fazil doesn't shoot a lot of my style, and we refer each other work all the time. We have the things that we're good at, the same way you have the things that you're good at. You're going to find the person who's just the right thing for you. And so you can always reach out to Fazil, even if he's not the right style for you. Reach out and ask him questions. That's a great place to get referrals from, is other photographers.
Yes, exactly. And I will say that anybody who does contact me, I will be willing to give my time and, set them on the right path, because if it is not a job for me, I always make sure that, I get my people on the right path.
And you have a roster of photographers that you know.
I am lucky that I'm niched enough so that the people who I want to contact me and who also want to hire me are the ones who I get in touch with. And I don't end up getting a lot of like random people. Occasionally I do. And the way that it happens is usually the personality clash. I had this lady who is working for a client that I shot a year ago and needs sort of the same suite of things that the other client needed. So she got me on referral and she said, hey, this is what I need. And right away I could tell that there was just something off with her and me. And I could tell she was going to be a client that was going to be a little bit overbearing and very micromanaging because she was new and she just wanted to make sure everything was perfect, but also didn't know enough to know that like, okay, this is good, this is not good.
Or know what you wanted.
Exactly. And so she wanted a lot of portraits. She wanted a studio shoot. And I was telling her, I was like, look, you need these other things for your website. You need these other things to promote yourself. And she was like, I don't want those. And I couldn't for the life of me convince her that she should get those. And at that point, I knew that we were going to be fighting about it and I was going to be fighting her the whole way on doing these photos. And let's say for some reason I didn't fight her. She was going to be upset with me that we didn't do those photos, that I didn't push her hard enough. So I knew it was just a no-win situation. And so in that case, I said, you know what, this is not a good match.
It's not worth the money.
It's not worth the time.
For us who've done it in the business long enough, it just goes, the headache of it is not worth it. So that's also just another way to trust a good photographer is if they're going to just, in my opinion, refer work and turn down work.
I will say, I don't want to make this sound one-sided, my last example, but I'm sure for her, she probably called the person I referred her to and they were a much better fit. So I'm sure everything worked out fine for her. And so this is kind of where we come to the end of this episode. The overall point, I guess, that we're trying to make in this episode is there are probably 6 very, very important pieces of the pie, 6 very important ingredients that you can follow that will lead to your success in choosing and hiring a photographer that will help you find the best person for the job so that they are happy, so that you are happy, so that your prospective clients or whoever will be viewing these images are happy when they view the images and that the images will create the effect that you desire them to create. I want to thank Jake for dedicating his time to helping me out with this podcast. Thank you.
Of course, you're very welcome.
I will put his contact info in the show notes. And as always, guys, thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for listening to the Fazilla podcast. If you'd like to know more, you can check out my website at www.fazilla.com. That's FAZILLAH.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at fazilla.photo. Stay tuned for more episodes where I'll discuss photography and how it relates to life, marketing, and other subjects as well.